Hello, everyone. This is the February 9th UX CI/CD meeting. This is the EMEA Americas version since our coworkers in Asia cannot join in this time zone. I'm here with Gina Doyle, who's designer on Pipeline Insights and Runner, and I think we'll have Erica joining us soon from the release side. Cool. I'll start with the announcements then. Hayana is out of office. So she asked us to record and upload the call. The standing item that we have is reviewed OKR progress with the tracking issue for our Q1 OKRs. Especially here, the reminder to prioritize us impacting issues between PM and team. So bringing up severity and the importance of SUS-related issues in our team discussions. From my side, I'm happy that this is going well with my PM. We don't have that many SUS impacting issues on our release side, but the ones that we have, we're being able to schedule. So happy with our progress here. Do you have any thoughts? Anything you want to share, Gina?
No, pretty much the same thing from both Runner and Pipeline Insights. From me, we're able to prioritize them, so it's going well.
Yeah, and you have an item here as well, right, about Pipeline Insights?
Yeah, we recently rebranded the testing group to Pipeline Insights. I linked in the document the Slack thread of the announcement, but now all the labels in like for issues and stuff in GitLab automatically update to Pipeline Insights,
right.
But we're still trying to update some of the handbook references and things like that. So the group name is switched.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this happening because I've always seen verified testing, and like testing is one piece of CI, right? But the work that you're doing there is broader than that. So I think Pipeline Insights makes a lot of sense. I'm happy to see this change.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. Just like you said, I think testing wasn't really encapsulating the whole feature set that we were providing. So I like that. I like the name a lot better.
Yeah. Cool. So let's move down then and just try to briefly mention the points from our APAC peers, starting with Katie on package. Katie has been wrapping up the second round of solution validation for the package cleanup policies. One interesting component of this was testing linking to the settings from the feature page itself. That's interesting. I saw her asking about that on Slack. I don't have any examples from release, but I'm interested as well because in release, we have lots of links to the docs from the UI. And a lot of these is linking to a doc that describes how to change a setting, right? So I'm interested in how we can adopt this pattern or if we should at all. All right, now moving down, wrapping sessions to determine how the UI consume. Yeah, I'm trying not to be overly detailed here, but it's also hard to get the context just from reading here. So yeah, I can kind of get what Katie is working on here, but I think we can go into detail async later on. Does that make sense, Gina?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, cool. So in pipeline authoring, Nadia has been working on the CI catalog, which is a CI marketplace, but for GitLab. That is super interesting. I've seen like the vision designs that Nadia has worked on this before. So yeah, super interested to dive deeper into this and leave feedback async as well. There's also the work that Nadia is doing to document objects in pajamas within CI/CD, so the job object. Really excited to see this work as well because I think pajamas really needs a stronger set of conceptual definitions, and she's really driving this. So happy to see this happening. Moving on to pipeline execution, Vitika is working on usage code for pipeline usage. Another important effort, especially considering how we're dealing with free tier and how people understand their usage of GitLab minutes on the CI. So super interested. New SUS label customer feedback. This is interesting as well. I think it's better for async and providing visibility for shared runner usage. Does this has any overlap with your working runner, Gina?
A little bit. I think the main thing that she was trying to figure out is where this should show up, because there was a spot for like what it would just be part of your user menu pretty much. And when you go look at your profile, they wanted to add analytics for how many minutes you're using for shared runners.
Right.
And so it sort of overlaps just because it is a representation of runners, but that's really the closest that it overlaps with.
Right. Got it. Right. I can see Erica joined us. Hi, Erica.
Hello. Thanks for the updated link. I'm constantly having Zoom issues, so I thought it was me.
No, yeah. It's the very old Zoom problem of the host of the meeting is not here and then no one else can record. All right, so moving down to our own thread, on release, I've been working on different aspects of deployment approvals. The first link is project settings for deployment approvals. So essentially, if you're going to set up deployment approvals, you need to be able to properly set up how many approvals you need for a given environment, and who should be able to approve into that environment. So that's the first part of this. The second part is updating the approvals UI itself with the last details for development. The design work was wrapped up a little while ago, and then we updated the whole environments page. So it's likely that the approvals UI will be implemented for the new page. So there was some adjustments I was doing with that, and still some adjustments needed for how deployment jobs that need to be approved look like in other views, right? So in the pipeline view, in the jobs view, there's many places where today you can just run manual job that will now need to be, we now have the capability to be not only run, but approved or rejected. So it's an interesting feature because it sprawls through many different pages and UIs in GitLab. In parallel with that, I've been reviewing and working with Andrew, our front-end developer, on lots of MRs for the new environments page. So all the little pieces that make up that page. It's been a constant stream of MRs. So that's interesting to just review all the little pieces one by one. And then on the more strategy and planning side, me and Chris, our PM, we are conducting ongoing customer conversations. So usually 1 or 2 per week. Chris is summarizing these conversations in this first link here on the agenda. And then from there, we also have our weekly catch up where we kind of debrief these conversations and break down the main points from each one of them into issues if needed be. And those issues get a customer label. So once we have our weekly catch up, we go over all the issues with the customer label. They are also ordered by popularity, right? So it's not only with the label, but also the ones that got the most thumbs up to see beyond our own scheduling, our own planning, what is bubbling up from raw customer demand that we should perhaps put in our milestone. So this is all very new. We're still structuring this, but excited to have like more direct customer feedback in our planning process.
I have a question about the customer feedback. I'm trying to find okay, here we go. Do you also put those in the recordings in Dovetail and then also document them in that issue?
Yes, so Chris has been responsible for structuring them after we have the conversation. He's been uploading them to Dovetail, but then putting the summaries here in the issue. The reason is that it is easier for all of the engineering team as well. And not only the engineering team, right? We have technical managers and other people chiming in here. So it's easier for them if it is in an issue. But recordings are in Dovetail, yeah.
Okay.
And
yeah, I found, oh, sorry, go ahead, Erica.
You go.
I found the same thing, that it's easier for the whole team to access if it's in an issue rather than Dovetail, because it seems like those who are not like in the UX department don't feel super comfortable going into, and product, I guess, don't feel so comfortable going into Dovetail and like pulling out the insights from there.
Yeah, I think Dovetail is really good to break down, like when you have a high volume of research, it's great to break down that research But for these interviews, they are like short interviews, usually 30 minutes, 40-minute stops on like with one customer, usually around a single topic. So it's easier to just break them down and have them here, like dovetails, kind of overkill for this.
And then Daniel, one way you can make that work for you is to like go through this level of insight and try to like frame your learnings and take homes as like an early draft.
Right.
And then from that, like make your dovetail tags. And then like at the end, when you're trying to like crystallize your learnings, go through and tag everything in dovetail and like kind of bring it together there. But kind of the way that did you see that best practices for tags? I think that kind of assumes that you have all the interviews in your mind and then are going to code afterwards, which is okay. But this is a way that you can use this issue framework format to like work for you in that way, like put them in there, but then kind of tag after you have like a general sense of your findings.
So I don't think, because Chris is like being responsible to summarize these, I don't think he's tagging them. Yeah, I'm seeing here, he's not like tagging them. I think he's just using dovetail as like the video for this,
Well,
which like he could also use Google Drive or just like private on YouTube.
Yeah, I think
But,
like technically we're supposed to put them in dovetail for sure. But I don't know I did that. But so we could put them in dovetail, but like we can make it work for, I think this is a good format because it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
But like one way to make it work in the end would be to go through and assign those tags.
Yeah, I think I'll raise this to him and see if it makes sense for his process, really, because like these are supposed to be ongoing interviews. Like
no, I think you can let
if we
them
make
like,
it too heavyweight.
No, I would do it like it's 2 steps. Like let them collect,
Right.
Don't do too much. And then when you're ready to like formalize the learnings and write them up, then look back through here and see the key themes and then use those as stuff. But I think you don't want to have too many tags. That's like one of the best practices. So you can like use this to get the higher level steps. Yeah, don't talk about it yet. Just,
yeah, no, thank you for the feedback. We'll figure it out and see like what is the best way, because as I said, we just started, so like we just started like summarizing these and having this weekly process where we summarize, then we go through the customer issues. So how exactly we'll break down the insights and turn them into issues is still not entirely clear. Like we're just getting started, so we might invest more in dovetails to do that using the tags. So thanks for that. I do think that once we have a more crystallized process, we can definitely share this in our UX showcase.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome that you're able to talk or speak with the customers and then recap it there too. I think that's great.
Thanks. All right, I'll hand it over to you now, Gina.
Okay, I'm gonna just go through what's happening in both the groups. For Pipeline Insights, I'm carrying out a UX scorecard right now for review apps, and Daniel, this definitely overlaps with your area. I am just finishing it up today, but it is really difficult to configure a review app because I think like the environments, it depends on what I'm just using a static website, but it's been hard for me to just like actually get the website to be up and running. I think that's because of I decided to go with Surge and Gatsby to do that. And I think that's part of it and my unfamiliarity with that. But I am almost through it, and I'll be making like a video and summarizing all of what comes of it as well. The other thing that's coming up for Runner is this is part of our KR, but also goes along with where we want to go with Runner Enterprise Management. We have this, we've heard from customers that they struggle with seeing if they have 10,000 runners, seeing how many are behind by a certain amount of versions. So if the whatever, like the most recent version of runners 1410, and then some of them are like more than 2 versions behind, they want to be able to see that quickly. And it's hard to do that today because it's just a table of pagination and you have to like go one by one and see. So we want to be able to improve how we're displaying, how many are behind versions, and then how many need updates, and make that process easier. I'm really excited for that. I haven't seen anything in our product thus far that does something like that with updates. If anybody has seen that, I would love to be pointed to that, because I'd love to like reuse a pattern if possible.
I mean, I know there's likely reminders or some system of alerts for self-managed users to update GitLab itself, right? So like pushing and not pushing, but nudging GitLab admins to update their own version of GitLab. So perhaps that's one area you could ask.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
About communicating the versions of runners and what needs updates. I think there might be some overlap in terms of design patterns with the work we're doing on the environments page, because a lot of it is which one is the latest deployment to this environment, right? So there's a little bit of this vision of you have multiple versions of something that's running here, but it's the deployment within the environment rather than the version of the runner software. But maybe there are some useful patterns for you to look at there. I'll add a link here.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Another area that I was looking at, because our runners list right now is just a table, and it's like getting kind of out of hand with the amount of data that we have. So I was actually gonna try to explore very much in the future a different way of displaying the data, like you did with the environments page, or deployments. And yeah, so that I'm also going to use like that kind of pattern as a future version for runners, or possible version. So that could overlap with it anyways.
Yeah.
The last thing that I had that I was looking for feedback on was so our pipeline insights team wants to gather more feedback on visual review tools, which is a feature that you can add to review apps, and it allows you to comment on pages basically within the site, and then those comments turn into actual comments in GitLab. So it's easier to kind of point out the UI elements. We want to get some dog fooding feedback about that, so how team members at GitLab are using it. And I was wondering, right now we have this feedback issue to be able to capture all of that, but I was wondering how others go about obtaining the feedback around a feature. Do you use an issue, or do you use a survey? And like, what brings more interest to actually providing the feedback?
So I left a comment here mentioning maybe making a video sharing the problem space, or perhaps just describing the problem space in the UX showcase and following up with a survey could be one way to go for this. I think perhaps the challenge for you on this specific project is that the feature exists, but it's not very much used. So it's hard to visualize, right? Like exactly how it looks like when within the use case being applied, especially because I don't think we would ever use this for GitLab, the application itself. So that's tricky. One thing you could do perhaps is like what you're doing, like setting up a website, is having a website set up as the use case, and then use that as the kind of like vision board to help people understand, oh, right, so this is the issue. I understand the context. And now I can give feedback on the design and direction of this. Maybe that's one way you can go about it.
Okay, I don't know what I just did. I don't know if I deleted the whole document. I'm
Control Z all the way back.
Oh, okay, maybe it's back. Okay, anyways, I think that that's a great idea, like giving an example, because you're right, there aren't many people who use the feature. So I might try to do that and just add, we have some demo projects actually that our team puts together that we can test out all the pipeline insight features. So maybe I'll just add one of those in there, and then allow people to play with it too.
Thank you.
That's it from my side. If Erica, do you want to?
Yeah, I just put two items in there for feedback. Daniel, the first is kind of, I'm doing a little bit what you're doing. That's why I was like, I have an idea how to use dovetail. But basically, we're going to build out one issue per enterprise case study. And that's like a prototype of the summary there, with the idea that we can go into depth like over the next 2 quarters. So that's a prototype for what the report will look like. And right now I'm just using that, just starting to use that as a way to get good follow-up interview questions from engineers and product designers and product managers, right? To like make sure we're asking the right follow-ups in terms of technical requirements. And so I have like a comment for each of the kind of bucket threads. And I'm going to start this week or next week socializing that with the engineers. And then, so that's like the prototype. So it's like the questions for everyone. And then I'm working on with James, a case study of an athleisure company. We've had like a couple of meetings just internally, and we're going to write that up and then release that for like more targeted feedback questions, like, or follow-up questions. And the idea is like, as we meet with them over time, we'll build more and more of those questions in. So if you want to, you could provide, some questions there that would be interesting to you, and like make your own thread or comment within those threads. So it's not like pressing right now because it's just the prototype, but I'll probably in a week or so have a summary of our first case study to post. Go ahead.
This looks awesome. And a bit complicated, like beyond what I can understand. So I'll make perhaps silly questions. So the idea here is that this is the skeleton of what a case study for this company would look like. Yeah. After all the research has been done and compiled on Dovetail, like you just export this long case study into the UX research repo. Is that it?
Great. And this is like an example of what the final product will look like. And then like my UXR team, what they want to make sure that it's like at the right level of rigor, and we've communicated that. So I've kind of like played out what it looks like in terms of having a fidelity measure there. When I introduce this in my meetings, I'm like, I'm a research nerd. You can not look at that part. But like to make sure we would know how to operationalize high fidelity or low fidelity, that's why that's there. Yeah, but any feedback regarding, like, I'm hesitant to like post these things in channels because I feel like they'll be confusing, but I needed them to like explain to my team what I would be doing and what the final product would look like. So that's like an example without too much findings of what that will look like. And then there'll be like a doc that's like a very long case study, but this will just be like higher level notes. I think I might wait to socialize it more broadly when I'm not here to talk about it in person until I have the actual case study. So it's a little less confusing.
The other question I have is on these threads, right? Asking for follow-up questions. I see they kind of like target different areas. So the idea is that, for example, this first one, what follow-up questions do you have for this enterprise company about their infrastructure resources and SaaS usage? Like that is one place where I could provide follow-up questions around release, right? Yes, the idea exactly. Here is that these are follow-up questions that I, as a designer in release, would like to ask this company after the case study is done, like the kinds of questions that I have after I read this, or like, is this for ongoing research?
So they're great that I can put this into that prototype. So and we were debating this when I made it. So we think we're going to commit to doing this on a 6-month period for at least. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you can put your questions there, either that you'll want to ask, or when you see findings come up, you can post your questions there, and then I can like roll them into interviews. And it was not clear exactly when, because they're enterprise. So we have to like, do a little dance around availability and stuff like that. But yeah, the idea is that if we can't explore it in the initial interviews, that we'll set up another one and be able to like dig deeper into. Like last time we spoke about this, we have some follow-up questions about that we want to ask now. But it's hard to recruit for that and like to make a promise, because if you ask for all this commitment from them, like going into it, they're just like, it seems like a lot.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. They might bounce away from the research.
Yes.
I imagine.
So that's why it has like the fidelity of it, right? So we can kind of like have the same level of presentation, but then have different levels of fidelity in terms of how many people we talked to and what we were hearing.
Yeah. And would this like be all centered around one specific company, or this is just like an aggregate of different enterprise companies with a similar shape or similar focus?
Great question, Daniel. So I tried to link the initial study proposal. I think as we get started, for sure it will be, we're going to shoot for 6 companies that are working under different security and compliance requirements is the idea. Hard to recruit though. And so for each company, it will have its separate research issue report. And then if it seems, this is qualitative research, so it's messy. So if it seems like they're all really the same, then we will kind of combine it into one meta level
One case study.
issue report.
Yeah.
But it's like hard. This is the hard part about, it's like a little ambiguous. It's ambiguous until we kind of get underway and know.
Yeah.
And then I think what we might too, there's like a different ways to like group it together too, which would be like by industry vertical, right? So if we end up in like people in clothing and retail, they, for example, have set requirements related to not doing releases when there's like a big sale, like so around Black Friday or Christmas season, it's like don't touch it. So they kind of go in fits and starts with their like DevOps practice. So that might be one way to like characterize and group, but we just have to kind of wait and see. So any advice you have on how to make this less confusing and not, I think it's just kind of confusing because it's like open-ended a bit.
Yeah,
but
no, I appreciate how much effort and structuring has to go into this, because it's a massive volume of information. So this is great. One thing that maybe for me would help get my head around this is to think of this as like stacked umbrellas. So you might have like the big umbrella is, as you said, maybe an industry vertical, maybe like specific shape of enterprise company. And then within that, like, you don't need to try to force all of these massive companies with different use cases into like one shape to meet this case study, right? Within here, you can list more or less like some of these companies have these use cases and then a list of insight. Others have these use cases and then a list of insights. But as long as they're all of more or less the general shape, it makes sense that they are clustered together in this research report, because as we design against these use cases, we know that if we hit one target, we're hitting like 80% of the other targets of the other companies, because their use cases might not be the same, but they are adjacent. Does that make sense?
yeah, and I think ultimately it will be like a design exercise where you can read the case study and think about how it would impact this particular customer. And like a second step. So if we can pull this off, I think we can maybe with one, but the next step would be to layer in like a quantitative mapping of how much of our customer base does this case study map to, right? Well, we can't quite do that yet because we don't even know what our sample would be because it's so hard to recruit. And I was going to wait to get this started. But I think our teams need it already, because we have like, we're asking different questions of enterprise customers right now, a little bit in silos. And it's so hard to recruit them. But I'm like, oh, maybe I can like help to kind of connect the dots. But it also is important that all of those individual studies execute on their own. So they're not like waiting for this work to get started. So like that's confusing too. But I think in the end, it's going to be helpful. But yes, we're going to need a way of layering in how representative they are of our customer base on top of thinking about the fidelity of them.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. This is really exciting.
Okay, hang in there with me. It's gonna take a little while, but I think it'll be good. And then like, I really love it too, because what you shared with like mapping out the issues that those customers needed. I have a table for that too, like in the top of that issue report, which is right. Because I see in our Slack channels, I see the PMs doing that. Like they'll say, this customer has that need. What are our issues? And so I know that's like, you know, that's where we're working in issues. So like, that's how we can kind of leverage it. But I think in a way, this will be helpful for leadership when we say, we want to make this change, we can kind of point to these more in-depth case studies and think about the issues. So that's like, we're both doing that. So that's neat.
All right. We're a little bit over time, I think, or maybe almost at time. So let's move on to the next one. You have an update on the ops product direction survey, right?
Yes, that's so that I kind of got these two projects up and ready, and now they're like structured to drive forward. So the ops product direction survey is set up, and I set up a specific issue for survey development. So we'll just do interviews where people talk aloud as they take the survey and use that to like get their feedback. Like they'll be like, I don't know what that means, or like things like that. And then we'll ask about why and why and why, and then we'll use that to fine tune it. So we'll post updates on those interviews as they happen there. And then also, I think it's a way for us to get feedback from other teams. Specifically, we have a question around security that I think would be helpful for others to look at and comment on, but without like changing our whole project. So there's an issue, I think it's the one that I linked to. Yeah, so that example is the survey development issue and study. So we'll post the updates from the interviews there. Like this was confusing, we made this change. Will be kind of iterative in that way. And then I set up the comment threads to ask people for feedback. And the persona one is there because I think we're having some debates, or we made a change where we posted Ingrid as a separate one, but there was debates about what made them different. So I'm teeing that up to be a place where we can have another conversation about that, but I'm not ready yet, but it's set up for that. So.
All right, thanks for that, Erica. All right, so the last point is from Will, but actually is based on a conversation I had with him earlier this week. We had a CM scorecard scheduled for this quarter, but after discussions with Chris and Kevin on our PM team, we realized that there wasn't enough significant progress in feature work in the category of environments, like the progress is happening right now. So running a CM scorecard right now wouldn't make sense. So we deferred that to Q2. And then this was helpful to know in terms of other requests have been made with enablement ops. Yeah, so we tried to, like, it took us a while to get to this decision. So we tried to inform Will as soon as possible so he could free up his capacity for other stuff. So yeah, that's about it.
I just have a quick question on that one also, sorry, and this is probably because I'm newer, but I haven't run a category maturity scorecard. Is that something that you always do in conjunction with research, or is that like who does that fall on?
I would say that falls more on design and product within the team, more on design than product. But another aspect that Will told me is that even in Q2, where he won't have as much capacity for this, he still wants to help me because he hasn't run one before. So he wants to get more knowledgeable on the process. Will is very collaborative, so he's always up to, helping me review scripts or whatever I'm preparing. But yeah, I think it falls more on the designer than the researcher. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, I think that was the end of our agenda. I don't think we have any read-onlys towards the end. So I'll give us all 6 minutes of time back. Thank you all for being here. Enjoyed this conversation a lot, and thanks for watching.
Bye.